What's up, everybody? Welcome to another video in the Ideal Auto Factory. It's a blessing to be alive, to live a purpose, and oh man, it's such an awesome video today because we're going to be talking about camber gain, specifically how it relates to your RC drift chassis on the rear end. So, keep God first. Let's get into this video. In order to discuss camber gain, we must first know what it is. So camber gain is the change of camber as your rear end squats, specifically gaining negative camber. So your negative camber increases as you squat. That is camber gain. And camber gain can be mild, medium, or completely insane, depending on the angle of the camber link in relation to the angle of the lower arm. As you can see here on this setup, I have my setup station here, and this side has a steeper angle than the lower arm. This side has more of an equal angle as the lower arm. So the upper arm and the lower arm are more parallel. Watch as their change in camber here, and there's no change here. What you're seeing on this side is a gain in positive camber. This is not as common in RC drifting. I'm going to make this end higher and take this end and make it lower. I have now changed the angle of this camber link here for the rear arms. This camber angle is more parallel to the ground, whereas the lower arm is still angled like this. So let's see what happens. As you squat, now there is camber gain. There's an increase in negative camber as the vehicle squats. A rule of thumb, if you want to get more negative camber as you squat, then you want your triangle to be this way, going towards the center of the vehicle. Let me explain. Over here on this side of the chassis, we have a camber gain, and we're going to call this neutral camber, as it doesn't move. But over here, there's more camber as you push down. But notice, here, that camber link looks pretty parallel to the lower arm. The lower arm has a curve to it, whereas the camber link doesn't. So relative, yes, I know, but look pretty parallel. This link is straight, whereas the lower arm is going upwards. So it looks as if this is further apart than those two in there. So if the camber link is closer to the suspension mount, then the camber link is closer to the upright mount, you effectively get camber gain, because it is in relation to your lower arm. It's all hinges, it's all points. So now, how do you use camber gain to your advantage? Now, when you're getting an increase in that negative camber on throttle, you get more mid-drift and corner exit speed. You get more on-throttle consistent driving feel, okay? There is just a level of consistency that comes from knowing that when you pull on the throttle, you got that much more grip because of the dynamics of the wheels, the flat contact patch, or just a little bit of camber inwards. And so when you start to initiate your drift, the flickability is even increased. For the length of squat that the car travels downwards, there is a camber gain over that whole length. And it could be extreme or it could be mild, like I said. And so you would have to tune your car to basically get the right amount of camber gain for the right amount of squat that you want. Now, For the neutral, you don't build up as much grip when you pull the trigger on the throttle, so you get a easier drift initiation, and then also you get the ability to transition really fast, because now that consistent feel, the car is able to change directions really fast based on the fact that you don't have dynamic changes happening while you're squatting. So everything can move faster. There's no changes in grip levels as you do this transition and things like that. So you get it's a little more rapid. Of course, you could say that this is for more technical tracks, stuff that you're not hanging around a long time. As far as sweepers go, you need to go this way, you need to go that way, you need to hairpin get out of that corner, you need to hairpin do that. Then your grip needs to be consistent. If you have a long sweeper, or a less technical track, then once you initiate the drift, you have to carry momentum when it comes to neutral camber. But when it comes to positive camber, you can get on the throttle and get yourself a little more speed there. So those are the two differences. Of course, you get a more linear feel from the car when you have a neutral camber gain. A linear feel to your car is a really great way to drive until you want to experiment. So I highly suggest just running neutral camber. You figure out the car and then you can start experimenting with camber gain. One of the drawbacks to neutral camber gain is that when you're doing a roll, when your car is not just squatting, but you could lose more grip than you want. And with the camber gain, you get on throttle and then you roll. You still have camber, like, to make your contact patch flat. So with neutral camber gain, it's a little different. You don't increase the camber and then bring it back to flat. With that neutral one, you have your camber here, you go flat, and then now one of your tires is into the positive camber when you start rolling. So that's another, see that? So on this side, you can see, because there's camber gain, I'm going to squat. I have more camber now, and then when I roll, I get back to zero. Whereas on this side, if I squat, I'm on the throttle, no change in camber, and then I roll, I'm now in the positives. Of course, you can tune, get yourself more negative camber to begin with, and then when you roll, you have a flat contact patch. But that's just to show the difference, the extremes there. So I hope this video helps. One of the things that I like to do is I like to run neutral camber until I figure the car out, and then I'll start experimenting with a little positive camber gain. So get a little more camber increase as I squat, and then I go from there. And there's no special magic number. I feel like each car is different, and you need suspension that's soft enough to actually tune with. If you're running a stiffer setup, then you don't really get that much camber gain, and your car can feel even more consistent with a hot or medium camber gain setup, where your camber gain is taking you from, what is this? This one takes you from 2 degrees to, so the camber gains 4 degrees through the whole squat. Whereas there may be a tune where you only gain 2 degrees during the squat, and that could be from, just adjusting this up here one, or whatever it may be, to get you a nice tune specifically for the track, for the car you're using. Now, most of my fun cars have camber gain because the weight shift effect. I need camber to basically be more negative, so that when I start rolling, I still have grip and I can go forward instead of feeling like I just lost all my momentum and now my car is sluggish, and then I continue on once I straighten back out. So definitely in the weight shift category, there is camber gain, and I use that to my advantage. But on most of my sort of competition spec vehicles, there's definitely a more neutral feel to it because there's not a whole lot of dynamic changes to the car as you're going through the drift. So very minimal squat, very minimal roll, and there is no need for me to have so much camber gain there. So definitely for a competition style, my preference is to be more neutral. And then with weight shift, I like to have positive camber gain. I really hope this video helps. Please comment down below if you use camber gain and how much camber gain you have over your squat, you know, a mild, medium, or hot camber gain of like 7 degrees. I decided to make this video because I have a few cars now that are set up a little different from each other, and with how the suspension is, with how these springs and the dampers are, there can be a new dynamic to how these cars function when you change how camber gain or neutral camber basically works on your car. So thank you all for watching. Keep God first. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.